Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, the latest episode of Van Helsing, as well as the latest episode of Arrow. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time and I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Gotham, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Van Helsing and or skip to this week's episode of Arrow. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Gotham. Another great episode, this episode continuing, surprisingly, the whole situation with Professor Pig, because we still continue to see that divide amongst kind of Jim and the GCPD, because now the GCPD has, like, all been sent heads, and the only one who didn't get sent a pig's head was Jim, which I thought would have kind of played a bigger role in the episode in the sense of like all the other cops maybe ostracizing him a little bit just because it's like, oh, you're acting all holier than thou and stuff like that, which even Jim admits like he's messed up in the past. It's not like he's kind of escaped all that. Like he's done a lot of bad things in the past, but everything he's doing now is to do the right thing. It's trying to make up for all that he's done in the past. And it seems like a big part in that is trying to get the GCPD to be like, no, we don't need Penguin. But you have Harvey siding with Penguin in his episode, listening to him rather than he with Jim, even though Jim told him, it's like, this is a trap. Pig called me himself. It's like, oh, we're like, Harvey's so caught up. I think because Harvey's in a tough spot in a certain situation, because obviously, like, Harvey is trying to do the right thing. It isn't, I don't think it is just him being selfish or something, because Harvey has done the right thing many times in the past. Like I said, questionable in the beginning, sure, but he's easily become, like, the person that Gordon relies on the most, as easily, you know, his friend and the person he trusts the most. So it's sad to see, you know, them divided even more on this episode because of that, just because he's listening to Penguin. Interestingly enough, the guy he hired Penguin hired this episode, Headhunter. Interestingly enough, I actually looked him up a little bit in like just a quick glint, like Google, and it seems like apparently in one, like I was reading like a wiki or something about it, but apparently Moretti sent him to kill, like he was hired by Moretti to kill Gordon at some point in the comic books or something like that, which I find fascinating. I mean, the fact of the matter is Moretti's dead, so that storyline would never be able to happen in Gotham, but also it seems like he dies at the end of the episode, which is like, oh, I kind of expect him to be around, but I guess it's like, it's not like, you know, I guess he kind of falls in that realm of probably like zealous people, maybe like Falcone isn't really like a top tier like Batman villain. He's just kind of like a regular gangster. So I guess in the same thing kind of applies to him. Like he's super good and a marksman, but I don't think he was anything like special. Just for them to kill him off like that. I mean, there's always a possibility maybe he survived his wounds and everything. I mean, he did get like, you know, shot in one of his eyes and everything. But I just thought that was kind of interesting because he was sent to kill Gordon, but in this storyline, him and Gordon are quote unquote partners working together, which Gordon is not too happy about. Especially the way they handle themselves, not just Penguin's men, but the GCPD. Like, it's like, oh, this is kind of like a bad part of town. Like, no one really talks here. And they call the Narrows, and like the cops start beating up people. And it's like, just trying to get information from him. And Gordon had to stop him. It's like, what the hell are you doing? At one point, Headhunter, like, threatens like this dude, and if the lady didn't speak, which you even saw one of the GCPD like cops actually like hanging around like, oh my god, joking and laughing it up with him afterwards. And it's like Harvey's just kind of like, okay, you know, at the end result, no one got beat up too much. It's like the fact of the matter is no one should have gotten beat up at all. It's the point. Yeah, like I know, like, oh, you're cops, you knock a little heads together, but it's like these are just regular people. Like Gordon would have gotten the information if you just given him the opportunity to. You know, Headhunter just kind of did his own thing in this episode. I mean, obviously Gordon came through at the end of it all. I had a feeling that cop had to be the one that was actually Professor Pig. Why? Because he was still alive. The other guy was dead, and he was like, oh, I'm so wounded. And what was the other guy? It's like, you've got to be Professor Pig. I was expecting him to say something, and then, I don't know, but it's just like, but then the fact is that he was like, him and Gordon had that earnest conversation. It's like, oh, maybe he's not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they could do. It's like, no, he was. Just because it's like, it's too suspicious that he was the only, like, he was wounded, but he wasn't killed. The other guy beside him is straight up dead, and he just leaves you alive. It's like, that's a little suspicious to me. Even sad thing is, too, he ends up killing the ambulance people, too. Which is like, they were just doing their job and you killed him. But for him, it's like collateral damage in his war against Gotham, you know? So it is seeming like they are setting him up to be like a main threat this season. Because last season was kind of like, I guess, somewhat all over the place. I mean, really, the Mad Hatter was kind of the main focus last season, but more so the virus that he brought about. But that kind of sprout other villains. I mean, to be fair, I guess like, well, the Court of Owls was really the main antagonist of last season. But you know, like it's just interesting because this show you can never 100% pinpoint the main antagonist just because there are big time antagonists that overarching the entire season. I mean, because we still got Scarecrow on the loose. Plus now we got Professor Pig. You got the whole League of Assassins. Like now that you know. Raish is quote unquote dead. Obviously, I'll dive into that in a little bit. But it's like, since he's quote unquote dead, it's like, what happens to the rest of the league? Like, where do they stand in this whole situation? I think I brought that up last episode too, but nevertheless. But the fact of the matter is, Harvey didn't listen to Gordon, and not like a lot of, you know, GCPD members died too. So, but what's kind of interesting is when it was all said and done, what this situation did is it flipped a lot of cops. A lot of cops are now on Gordon's side because they saw what a hero. He's that shining light, you know, in Gotham. The fact of the matter is like other people didn't pay him much mind, but it's like, I guess it's a combination of because it's like Gordon's done what he's done in the past, but he's such a leading example now. He's shining so bright, and others are like, no, we're not standing for this anymore because it's like Penguin sent them in there, you know, even though Gordon warned them it was a trap. He went in there nonetheless because the people Penguin hired, they were like, no, we're not going in there. And he went in there and he saved the day. He even saved Headhunter, even though they've got their issues, you know? The sad thing about this situation, though, is he's brought the rest of the GCPD on his side, but now there's kind of a darkness or shadow cast on Harvey because Harvey, you know, he shot a cop, you know, the one that was dressed like Pig. Plus, the fact of the matter is he led them in there. He didn't trust his partner. Gordon was like, trust me. I mean, because to be fair, Harvey, it's not like your, like, decision making has 100% been your own. Everything has kind of been tailored towards Penguin. Like, it's something that, even though he was pretending to be the cop, it's something that he ended up saying that I think kind of holds true to Harvey. Is the whole aspect of like, you start off a little bit, you know, at a time, and then just slowly everything down and kind of catches up to you just after everything that they've been through. And it's just like, it's easy. Like, Gotham's an easy city to kind of get swept up in the darkness. And so I think next episode, like, Gordon's going to be trying his best to pull Harvey back from that, which kind of Bruce is kind of going through the same thing. But obviously I'll get into that later on too. But it's just, I don't know, it's kind of sad because I feel like this situation is going to create an even bigger divide because, like, obviously the GCPD is going to look at, oh, it's all Harvey's fault. Harvey's the one that led us in this situation. Yeah, he's the one taking money from, you know, I feel like that might be the direction it might head, but still. But what was really interesting about this too is Sophia said, like, for Penguin not to do what he did, like, get like, oh, announcing to Gotham is like, oh, you were working with the GCP, because she's like, ultimately when they fail, it's going to blow up in your face. My dad wouldn't make a mistake like that. And just to spite her, Penguin did it. He even one-upped it and went out there himself, like, in public, showing his face and like, oh, I'm endorsing this whole joint operation essentially. And it's like, it blew up in his face like she said it would. Not to a certain degree, but yeah. I can only assume Penguin didn't listen to her because they have a good relationship. And it does seem like, oh, he was fishing for her opinion, but it's because he thought she was going to say yes to him. Because Penguin's so used to yes people, everyone giving him what he wants. Sophia isn't like that. Mainly because she's trying to play with you. She's trying to act like a good ally and obviously kind of pull you in, like I said, almost like, you know, make her someone that seems so reliable that you can go to for counseling and stuff like that. Because now he's going to look at Sophia's situations from now on and look at it, okay, she's someone trustworthy. I should listen to her. You know, her father did run this town a lot longer than me, you know, so should take her advice into consideration. But for him, he's always just kind of like, oh yeah, Falcone had his way of handling things. I've got mine, and mine way is the new way, is the new way that's going to get results essentially. So, like I said, it seems like that can only be the reason why he doesn't listen to her. I mean, also because, like, he, you know, always, like usual, I think it's also, and I'm sure that plays into Sophia's angle as well, is the fact is of him underestimating her. It's kind of a bit part, just because, like, oh, her dad's the real boss, like, underestimating, like, how dangerous he can be. Like, Sophia has, even in the short time we've known her, has already shown herself to be a deadly opponent in a way she can easily twist you around her fingers. And that's because that whole underestimating angle is coming, you know, is she's playing into that, you know. So, I mean, because the sad thing is you're seeing all this set up to be ultimately Penguin's fall. So, and essentially you can see him, like, tightening the noose around his neck, and he doesn't even realize the rope's there, you know. So I'm interested to see where this whole thing goes next episode, with like Gordon kind of being shown in the light as a hero, and obviously Penguin suffering a little backlash from this because of what he did. He tried to back and be like, no, it wasn't me. It was like, the GCPD handled that, even though you were like endorsing it, but like, oh yeah, we're here to take down Pig, so. But I'm also curious to see what Pig has in store next episode as well, because he makes Gordon seem like to him, it seems like Gordon's going to be a part of this big masterpiece plan of his that has multiple parts to it, because he's like, oh yeah, hearing you talk about Gotham being, it's not just the police department. From high and low, Gotham is sick from all different angles, and it seems whatever he's got planned next is going to be about eradicating all of that. I am curious to find out what it is that motivates him. I guess it's something because he kind of talked about it last week's episode of like he needs like essentially kind of talking vaguely about the fact of what he's lost. So I can only assume he's someone that lost something throughout the course of the city. Maybe it was something over the course of last season, because we have Lee's whole storyline about coming back to Gotham to make up for, she blames herself for being under the Tetch virus and what she did, basically a lot of Gotham having suffered. Maybe something similar happened to Pig, that basically he lost people he cared about because of that. Maybe he got driven insane by the Tetch virus and ended up killing someone that was important to him, and so now he wants to kind of dismantle Gotham in a certain sense. So maybe that's what we're dealing with. Maybe something similar, but we'll just kind of have to wait to kind of find out about that. Another interesting thing about this episode is the fact of the matter is the whole Barbara and Tabitha and Selena situation. Barbara not wanting to continue the business because her main reason for doing the business was because it was kind of meant for like it had an ulterior purpose, and that wasn't really exist as an actual business. It was more like this will exist long enough for Raish to get a good idea, keep his eyes and ears close to Gotham's underworld and stuff like that, kind of get the ins and outs of the city. But now that he's gone and everything, she kind of doesn't feel like running the business because it doesn't really serve a purpose. All three of them working, it's like, no, we're better off on our own. Their own, like Selena and Tabitha are like, yeah, let's work together, and Barbara's not all for it. Still begs the question, what did Raish show her last time, the episode before last, that she was like, what was that? And he was like, he kind of never gave her an answer, and he was just like, goodbye. Now immediately something that kind of just randomly kind of went into my head this episode, like, could Raish have been trying to resurrect himself in a new body? It's like, oh, I've been in this body for so long, I need my next heir to step up. It's like, could that be what that whole thing's about? That's like the previous Raish possessed the next Raish. So could this all be about making Bruce the next Ra's al Ghul so that he can be possessed by Bruce? Is that how that whole thing works? Like, has this person's soul moved on from body to body? Could that be what we're doing, like a soul transfer thing? Because like ultimately, like to my recollection, when it came to Ra's al Ghul, this is the one I'm referencing in particular, is the one from the 90s Batman animated series. I don't remember if he actually was in the Lazarus Pit. I think he didn't get into the Lazarus Pit until after like him and Batman crossed paths. It's not like he was in it first and then so I don't know. I'm curious to know what his scheme is. Like, I mean, maybe he feels like his body, even though he can't age, his body isn't as young and as powerful as it once was. So maybe he needs to find someone else that has the potential, so that once that person, I don't know. I'm curious. Like I said, I'm curious what he has in store for Bruce, but nevertheless. So Selena tries to do things on her own, which we had that brutal death at the group known as the Demons. That's kind of interesting. The names being the Demons, the Demons, the Demon Head. Just always kind of interesting. Putting that dude's face to the bike and then revving, like spinning the wheel and blood splattering. Like I said, I feel like this season's so much bloodier than the previous ones, but maybe that's just my imagination. But blood went flying and everything. Tabitha, of course, comes and helps out Selena, because obviously they're a team and everything. And then surprisingly enough, Barbara comes in, like, and what's kind of interesting too, like, about how Barbara walked in, like, Barbara's like, yeah, I killed 5 people. They're like, oh, with help. It's like, not really. Barbara just went bang, bang, bang. And it's like, when you notice that too, like, she did it kind of fearlessly, like, kind of showing you she isn't necessarily the same Barbara, because initially she wasn't going to help them, but now it's like, okay, fine, we'll run this business. So that's definitely interesting, because, Selena is, and it's something Tabitha brought up. It's like in desperate need to prove herself, essentially, not just this whole business opportunity, but also to herself. And, it's like, oh, I'm capable of so much more. I'm capable of reaching the big leagues. She doesn't want to just be scrounging at the bottom for kibbles and bits, essentially. So you have those three working together, which is interesting, especially Tabitha and Barbara being on the same team. I am curious to see what else has really changed about Barbara. We haven't 100% seen, maybe Tabitha will learn about something. I'm curious, will anything happen between them? It's like, well, she killed your boyfriend, I guess, which was, there was something there, but obviously there was something between her and Tabitha, so it's kind of a love triangle situation. So it's complicated, and I'm not sure she'd be willing to pick things up after. It's like, yeah, you put a bullet in his head and killed him and everything, but then Tabitha killed her, so it's like, maybe that makes it even Stevens. I don't know. I'm just curious. But for like I said, for now they're working together, so that's interesting. But obviously, another big part of this episode was dealing with Bruce. The fact of the matter is, after everything that kind of went down, he's still dealing with it. And it seems like in this episode, they show, Bruce has always kind of had anger issues to a certain extent. This episode kind of played into it because it reminded you at the beginning of the episode, with a preview of oh yeah, previously he had beaten the crap out of someone. I think that was back in season 1 or 2, maybe. They also referenced him not being in school because he met a classmate of his named Grace. I was like, right. I think I remember bringing that up recently. The fact of the matter is he hasn't been in school for a very long time. I think season 1 and 2 were the only times we ever really saw him in school. And subsequently, he's just been home tutored ever since. I don't remember if they ever took time out to really explain that. He's never been in a school setting. It's not you're Bruce Wayne. You're not you really need to go to school. But then again, it kind of makes sense. It makes it a lot easier to do what you need to do when you just have homeschooling. So I was like, oh, but he'd eventually go back to school, wouldn't he? Because he runs Wayne Enterprise, which I'm curious where that whole angle stands this season as well. So now that now that the Court of Owls has been rooted from Wayne Enterprise. Granted, he's not old enough to run the business yet anyway, so I'm just curious where his standing is with the business. Okay, we haven't really tackled that side of the story this season so far, but he meets up with the dude he beat up last time, along with this new douchebag named Brett, who kind of runs his mouth off. And I saw this previously in the previews, and Bruce had got super pissed and beat the crap out. I was like, oh man, that sucks. And then it's oh, that was all in his head. I was like, ooh, that's good. But what I loved about the whole situation is that Bruce kind of gave him the ultimate middle finger, because it's oh, we're trying to go to this spot. Bruce is oh yeah, the reason why they didn't let you in is because they know who you are. They just don't care. And then Bruce does it the cool, super rich kid douchey thing to do. It's oh yeah, actually I bought this place. Yo, everyone can come in, yeah, except for you, Brett. You can scram. And I'm like, that's so good. It's so mean and petty and passive aggressive. I was I love it. To be fair, Brett was being a douchebag. Even the other dude who Bruce had problems with before, it's yeah, dude, back off. And it's they're having fun and everything. So sadly, you see Bruce drinking himself to a stupor, and he's oh yeah, this is the new me. He's I'm gonna live like this for a while. So it's something that Alfred had brought up early in the episode of being well, Bruce needs this whole anger thing is just, it's kind of him over, it's signs of something else. There's something else deeper that, the anger is just a front for. So, it's the fact of the matter is he doesn't know how to really feel about the whole killing Raish, because he's I should feel bad about it, but considering who Raish was, maybe he doesn't after everything Raish had done. So breaking that code, doing that, makes him think, I don't know. It's really hard to say what's going through Bruce's head. It's just this is his way of compensating, and that's just partying and drinking. So we're definitely probably going to be seeing over the next couple episodes, or just anytime we cut back to Bruce's story, him kind of spiraling out of control because of this whole situation. Probably going to get so caught up in it, forgetting his mission of wanting to help the city. So I'm curious to see what they do with Bruce's storyline. The whole situation still makes me go, could there be some validity to what I was thinking about the whole Raish possessing his body thing? Maybe not, but we'll just have to see about it. Like I said, overall, a great episode, and I'm very interested to see what goes on in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing. Another great episode. In this episode, we see the conclusion where last week's episode left off, where we have Vanessa going up against Sam. Mainly him taunting her, basically bringing her. I don't remember if I talked about this in the first season, but like the moment that whole thing happened with Sam and the whole Brennan situation, he'd been like, oh, they're planning on killing us. Like I had a feeling Sam was lying then. I don't remember if I ever brought that up, but I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. He brought that up. He's basically, oh, Muhammad lying, me lying to Axel that he killed the refugees, or the fact of the matter is manipulating Vanessa into killing John, and then also killing Susan and just rubbing that in her face. So, I mean, fortunately, everyone else was safe. You know, the Johnsons picked up the group of kids at the juvenile center. Obviously, there is some bad blood there because it does seem like not just one, but a few of the kids who are with the Johnsons came originally from the juvenile group, because there's a girl, Chloe, who's kind of like second in command, I guess. And there's one of the dudes that came to save them. His name is Ethan. The moment they unlocked the door, like she just kind of walked past Ethan, was look at him. Like, I guess they look at him almost like a traitor, but I guess, you know, him as well as Troy left because of the way things were handled, at, you know, the juvenile center. So, a big focus of this episode, obviously, like I said, was Vanessa going after Sam. Julius wants to go after him too because he wants him dead for what he did to Julius's mom. But Vanessa's telling him to stay there because it's like, oh, you're human now and everything, and also like the kids love you here. You can help them out, you can protect them, you know. But like unbeknownst to Julius, like he feels this pull to help her. You know, I think it's even beyond just like, oh, I'm trying to be there for you, because something happens to people that Vanessa like turns back. There's a connection there that everyone feels. Doc feels it, Julius feels it, and so does Phil. They all feel it to the point. Phil and Phil. They feel it to the point that they're all having these dreams, and something Vanessa talks about later on, it ends up being like a red door. I mean, really, it's not really a red door. It's a door, but like red lights are hitting it and make it look red. Which I can only assume that's connected to this whole like thing Axel knows about Vanessa last season. Like, it's almost like she is an experiment to it. Like, it seems like there is definitely like a sci-fi angle to this when it comes to the whole Van Helsing bloodline. Like, maybe whatever, like, you know, like this is, I feel like it's just more than just a like supernatural bloodline thing. There is like a bit of science fiction in this whole thing too, to the point like Vanessa can remember this door, and because of that, subsequently everyone else connected to her over the course of being turned back feels it too. To the point they have a rough idea where to go because they can feel it. Like Phil's like, no, I can find Vanessa. Let's go. It's like we don't even know where to begin looking, but Phil on the level, no. So I think this is kind of an interesting thing that kind of like was present in this episode. Something else I want to point out too is the whole Doc situation, because obviously she was feeding Axel some of her blood, which obviously he couldn't drink any of it because it's like it's worse than dog piss. But there's that aspect of her putting it in her mouth, which isn't the first time she's done that. She did it one time last season too. Part of me was wondering, is that some kind of little like thing? Maybe it's connected because Vanessa drinks blood, that maybe on some level the others she turned back still kind of do it too. But then I'm like, no one else has done that. Phil never did that, and he got turned back first, but we've never seen him do it. Not like he's been secretly doing it. Julius hasn't done it yet. So it seems like it's only a Doc thing, which I'm wondering like what that's all about. Is that like some part of her on the inside is still craving for blood? Is it almost like an addiction? And was it like almost like if you're addicted to smoking or drinking, you still get that little urge every once in a while? Then why no one else has it? Maybe it's just something with Doc's personality. Maybe you would think out of anyone, Julius would feel it the most. Anyone, considering the fact that he was a vampire much longer than any of them put together. So I'm wondering what that's all about. Like I said, it was never really brought up. And you can see Axel kind of sear from the corner of his eyes and almost looks disgusted, but he doesn't say anything. So I'm like, what is that all about? Also, you had Lucky and Phil getting their thing on. We saw them doing like some kissing and making out, to the point you even see Muhammad, like the camera focuses on Muhammad. He's like, whoa. And he starts smirking a little bit. I also love the fact that Phil's like, yeah, he sleep like a baby. And then Lucky's like, yeah, a baby, a coke baby. And then feels like, yep, sleep like a coke baby, which is, because I was like, right, because they gave him like cocaine to basically help him with his pain and stuff. It's like pain medicine, except it's not, well, I mean, it still seems like it has its addictive aspects, because they're like, yeah, we're gonna have to wean him off that, which is just like, I mean, you know, obviously do not condone like cocaine uses or or anything. It's just funny in this context of like referring to him as a coke baby, which in actuality, now that I've said it out loud, it's like that's even more fucked up for me to say. So I do apologize, but that was just kind of interesting that they phrased it like that. But getting back to it, that Phil and Lucky are kind of, there was already something there. I don't know what it is. I had this weird thing, and I know it's weird to mention this. Like, I like it when people are different heights like that, like her being taller than him. Like, I don't know why. Like, it's some weird, like, opposites attract type of thing to me, where it's like I like when a significant other is taller than, well, their partner. It doesn't matter, male, female, I don't care. Like, I think it's something like, it's like cute when someone has to kind of like lift up, or like the tall person, the shorter person has to lift up to that person or pull them down to them, or the person that's tall kind of has to bend down. I don't know, I just think that's cute for whatever reason. I know it's stupid, but it's just like one of my little weird things. You had Axel telling Doc, hey, kill me if I go too far, which Doc's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's calling her a pussy for it. But it's just because for Doc, she even apologizes. It's like, what do you want me to say? She's like, I'm sorry, I panicked. Which, once again, Doc has pulled it back. I'm also saying that because I also saw the actress who plays Doc, she was in an episode of Supernatural tonight, which I talked about. But just because seeing her in that different light, I was like, you're not Doc. That's good. But like I said, I've been giving Doc a lot of shit. I think rightfully so. Kind of like, I've been just as pissed off as Axel has been, but the fact of the matter is, she has lived with it. Like I said, she's trying to forget it, but that's just because it was with her every waking moment what she did. Because out of anyone, she betrayed Axel, because even Vanessa was like, he kept you around for so long. He was feeding you his own blood, and you did that to him. So ultimately for her, it's all about making up for the past. So it's kind of interesting to me in a certain regard of being like, this is like Doc's second chance, like I said before, technically third chance. But it seems like she's pulling it around, trying to make up for the past and everything. So, and interestingly enough, we did see that she ended up getting one of those balloons with the note that got released at the beginning of the season. So that's kind of interesting. She ended up writing on it with her blood to make that symbol, but I don't think she actually read the letter, which is kind of interesting. Maybe when the group, because like you could tell everything's converging to Vanessa. Like they're all converging because they're all drawn to Vanessa, who's drawn to the red door, which are all being drawn there anyway. So it's a combination of just like eventually all groups are going to meet up again, and it's going to be very interesting to see what goes down there. It's also interesting too because Axel ended up getting trapped in that bear trap. I was thinking like, okay, is he near the Johnson's camp or something like that? It turns out not to be the case. It's like, well, then who put that out there? Like whoever they are, like Doc and Axel are probably going to run into them soon enough. Not unless that was kind of referencing something else that's come up earlier in this, like being like, oh, it's one of the other groups or something. I don't know. It was also kind of interesting too because Vanessa, before going up against Sam, drank Felix's blood because he was like, I need you to do something. Like, I need to know in some shape or form I helped kill that guy. So, and you had Troy being there to see what Vanessa did, which I'm curious, did he tell the others about that? Because it's got to be a little weird seeing her bite into someone's drinking their blood. That's got to get back to the other group. Which I wonder, are we done with the Johnsons, or will we kind of circle back to them or not? Because when it's all said and done, like well, really quickly, gotta like, because this episode also shows you like, because even Vanessa's like, don't underestimate Sam. It's like, I knew Sam was pretty badass as a human, but it's like, I guess like we never really got to see him go a little nuts. Like when he's not holding back or just trying to pretend to be normal and good. Because now you see him as a vampire. It's like he's so quick. He's so agile. He's very, because it's all a game to him. Like I guess because he's a psychopath and it just gets amplified more as a vampire. Because when you're a vampire, it makes the more douchey side of you come out. That's kind of what's happening with Axel. Axel, I obviously would rightfully so be pissed at Dot, but I think his feelings are amplified even more as a vampire because you remember Susan kind of did a similar thing where she was talking mad trash to Vanessa, like, oh, I drained Dylan, when in actuality she didn't, just being an asshole, So I think the same thing applies in these regards. But then again, with Sam, it's like, is it really it being amplified, or was he always, it seems like he was always that deranged. It just seemed like maybe for certain reasons, maybe even for like Muhammad, he kept it in check, which you still see the whole Felix situation. Because the moment she looked at Felix, she knew exactly what he was going for, which Felix was like, who's Muhammad? And it's just like, don't worry about it. Like Sam's just a psychopath, and left it at that. So Kind of makes you wonder will Felix and Muhammad cross paths. I definitely get the feeling that eventually, whatever it happens, like Sam and Muhammad are going to meet up again. I'm just curious to see like how that all plays out. Plus, we still got that mysterious person that's on the way following Vanessa along. Once again, still have no idea who they are. We didn't see them pop up at all this episode, but they're close enough behind on Julius and Vanessa's trail. But the fight against Sam, obviously, like Vanessa held her own. I mean, got repeatedly stabbed. Which that didn't stop her. Julius showed up in time to help. Once again, I think it is beyond just like wanting to do the right thing. It's a big part of it, but I think the biggest part is the fact of the matter is of their connection. So Sam threw himself out the window because he even calls Julius out for like, it's like, oh, you let her turn you? Like almost like calling him pathetic for it, because now that he's a vampire, like Sam doesn't ever want to go back because of, because as we learned from Phil last season, once you become human again, like things that healed up by you becoming a vampire, like for instance, Phil like had like a shoulder injury or whatever, like it came back. He could feel it come back when he after becoming human again, just because it's just for him it was a good thing because it was reminding him of who he was, or that he was human again, that was not necessarily behind him but there, a constant reminder of who he was and during that time. But Sam throws himself out the window. I didn't think the fall would kill him. But I guess in this case, like, vampires aren't like... Because vampires in this universe aren't, like, immortal. They're a little bit more durable, and they're stronger. But they, like, I guess, if a fall can break enough parts of their bodies, maybe rattle their brains, kind of maybe like some zombie rules, like if, Because usually if vampires take enough bullets, they will die. Because their bodies aren't, like superhuman. They're like, oh, we're going to heal immediately. Like, because even Vanessa's body like works, I feel like 1,000 times better than even like a feeder or a feral. Because I feel like they don't heal not nearly as quickly as she does, and don't have like the regenerative like healing factor that she does. So. Because I was like, you really would think that would kill him? I thought he'd be pretty okay afterwards. I mean, he was laying there, but like I said, maybe it's just a situation of like it breaking his body, that even as a vampire, it would kill him. So I don't know. I mean, it's not like the show hasn't already shown that vampires aren't as durable as other medium has to be. Like, oh, they get stabbed. It's like, oh, they'll walk it off in a tiny bit. So Sam is just a psychopath with a lot of durability himself because he's still alive. But for Vanessa, it's like she's focused on this red door. She can't be bothered with Sam. She's telling Julius to go back once again to the group, but it seems like he's following her. So like I said, I'm curious, will they go back to the Johnsons first, which they'll turn into all issues like, yeah, you fed off of Felix, what are you? That turns into that conversation, or are they going directly after the red door? Oh yeah, I also can't forget about the fact is that Dimitri found out about Anastasia. He pronounces it a specific way. I always just kept pronouncing it Anastasia, but that might be the proper way. Either way, this is the episode that Dimitri found out about it, which I was like, all right, that's kind of sad. I guess it would take a little while for that news to kind of get back to you. I guess he just figured he figured she was hunting Vanessa. I'm sure he's going to paint that as like, oh, Vanessa's the one that killed her, which is kind of interesting considering the fact is that Julius thought the same thing of his mom was killed by Dimitri. Nevertheless, now he's building up an army, a legion of his own, which in actuality, we actually kind of think about it, Vanessa's kind of doing the same thing. Obviously, she has a much smaller group, but now we also see what happens like to those that get turned by her, that they become kind of her own legion. It does seem like Dimitri is recruiting Julius's former people, because now they're like, hey, what happened to Julius? He got turned, so you're left without a leader. And one of them tried to step to Dimitri, and he just ripped off their bottom jaws. Like, so now they serve him, which the whole thing was like for the purpose of them fighting against him, but Dimitri's too old and too powerful for them to really do that. And plus, the person that was their master, their leader, he's going now too, so... Like, some very interesting developments went down in this episode. A great episode. I was kind of hoping Vanessa would kill Sam, but I had a feeling, I was like, nah, they're going to keep Sam around a while just because of how dangerous he is, and just he's probably definitely going to cause more problems in the future. So, I mean, that's kind of another thing too, because like they kind of played it in the preview that like Julius was like, "Oh, there's much stronger vampires out there," and it's like Sam's kind of an example of that, and even he's most likely not most likely, definitely is not the strongest of the vampires. Like I said, Dimitri's super strong on his own. The only reason why Vanessa got him was because she kind of caught him off guard in season one's finale. So, I mean, maybe it's a combination of just I don't know, because like I say, even with blood in like human blood in her system, she still didn't like go in for the kill against Sam. So, but maybe that's just because she was so caught up in revenge, she just kind of let her guard down. So, I don't know. We're just gonna have to wait and see. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode with this whole Red Door situation. Like, because this whole situation goes back to like Doc's sister Grace, when the whole military brought that whole thing down about like, oh man, like the moment word came out about like Vanessa, it was just like, oh, don't tell anyone about it. There's a file on her, so like obviously there's something there. Maybe it has something to do with Vanessa's mom. Maybe she was kind of brought in. Maybe she was treated as a lab rat, and they knew about Vanessa's they knew about her mom being pregnant. And so the moment they found that out, like Vanessa's mom tried to hide her from like, not only like the vampires from this destiny as a Van Helsing, but even the military and the government. So maybe that plays a part. And like I said, I feel like there's got to be like some like science fictional aspect to it as to like some kind of experimentations. For what exactly, I don't know. We would just have to wait to see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Arrow, another great episode. Took me by surprise when we got introduced to Caden James. I figured like that storyline was going to come back around. I just wasn't sure. Like, it was kind of interesting how like it all went full circle. I figured that's what the whole Laurel situation was connected to, but I just didn't expect that to be connected to what Helena and Felicity were working on too. Like, you get what I mean? I didn't expect the paths to necessarily cross. Like, I had a feeling that they were connected, but I wasn't sure. So when it ended up being revealed, it's like, oh wow, that's crazy. Also, that Caden James is played by Michael Emerson. That's so cool. I had to look him up. Just to make sure I wasn't getting his name wrong. But obviously, that's Ben from Lost. Wasn't that his name? And obviously, like Harold Finch from Person of Interest. I'm like, that's so cool. It's so sad. I mean, I'm about to say, because never mind. This isn't his first time playing a bad guy, because he played a pretty bad guy in like Lost as well. But I mean, then again, he flip-flopped a lot. And but I'm so used to seeing him as Harold, as a good guy as Harold. I'm like, he's a villain. Which I'm curious, are they setting him up to be main tier villain this season, or he's just going to be like, not main antagonist, but he's like one of the big antagonists of this season? Because it seems like he's the one that rescued Laurel off of Lian Yu, which she's killing people in this episode because it's all about trying to destroy the internet, but not really. It was just meant to, like, rather than him do it himself, the whole point was to manipulate Felicity into doing it for him. So it's like, all trails go back to her and not him. So it's like, now you see why he was locked up by Argus. But now because the whole episode kind of dealt with the fact that Felicity feeling guilt because she helped out Helena, because it was like, oh, I help you get rid of. You said, oh, Caden was a good guy, but it's like, nope, he's not. He actually hit her. We never actually get to find out what happened to the rest of Helix. I guess they kind of scattered to the winds, did their own thing. But I guess from time to time, like, I guess Caden kind of did his own thing too. And Helena, like, probably like believing him so much. I thought he'd be younger. I figured as much because we never saw his face last season. So I figured like, okay, they hadn't cast him yet. So, which actually, when in actuality you think about it, it's like, well, you consider that he's kind of a tech supervillain? Tech villain. It's like, so you're basically evil Harold from Person of Interest to a certain extent, which that kind of existed. That's a whole thing in itself. It's actually kind of interesting too when you actually think about it, because one of his co-stars in that is Amy Acker, who's currently on The Gifted, a Marvel show, and he's on Arrow, a DC show. I love when you think about stuff like that too much, but it's so good. Nevertheless, Because for Felicity, this is her making up for something she did, like, because that was like, she was the only one that was all on board with this decision, because even to the point the team was divided on the sense, because she was like, I need to do this, Oliver was like, don't do this, and I was kind of like, I should have listened, especially because afterwards he just kind of left her high and dry, because it's like, oh, you're too much, there's too much heat associated, the whole Adrian Jay situation last season, but it's like, now the roles are kind of reversed and everything, so I'm curious to know what his ultimate goal is. Like, he needed that to upload some kind of code secretly, so that whole situation is manipulation after manipulation. I'm curious to, like, is he going to try and bring Felicity into the fold? Obviously, he used her this episode, but I think he's taken my interest in her and everything. Also, what does Laurel get out of this? Besides the fact that he saved her, we also see her kind of being all brutal and everything. And he's like, oh yeah, like, she's like, I had a family too. Because we've never actually dived too deeply into Earth 2 Laurel. Like, what happened to her dad and everything. What happened to her on Earth, her Earth. Like, we still have never really dived into that too much. So, like, how different her life was from the Laurel we know here on Earth 1. I guess it's just weird seeing her being all, like, killery and stuff like that. And also in such brutal way, using her voice to basically kill people from the inside. That's like, ugh. Kind of going, as, Curtis says, kind of going all Black Widow, which is interesting. DC, Marvel having a Black Widow. It's a whole thing in itself right there, too. But nevertheless, it was kind of interesting how things were handled in this episode in that regard, too, because it's like, for one, I love the whole situation of Felicity being like, I'm so sorry, we're in date night, but I have to go and everything. It's like, it's okay. Which is interesting. She's like, oh, is this what it was like with being with you every time? But it's like, it's interesting to me because, like, Oliver never really had to deal with that when it came to significant others in the show. Because, like, when things happen with significant others in the show, typically most of them ended up finding out about his whole situation, if not working with them. That being Laurel was an ex. And then obviously Sarah and now, like, Felicity. Because by the time him and Felicity started dating, it was the whole situation. Well, yeah, because she was already working there. She didn't have the codename Overwatch yet, but, like, she was working with them at the time, so it's like, they never really had to really deal about the whole, like, oh, I'm just leaving, like, the whole Kara situation of, like, oh, I gotta go. To be fair, all her boyfriends so far in the show have already known who she was and everything, that being Jimmy and Monel, so it's kind of, like, not the same thing, too, but still the aspect of, like, oh, yeah, I gotta go do the superhero thing. I'll be back without telling you what I'm doing, it's never a thing for them. But it's still, I guess, it's this aspect of just, like, I don't know, that's just me overthinking it. It's just kind of interesting that roles did kind of get reversed in this episode. I did appreciate Oliver showing up to help and everything, but, kind of made things worse. Which, to be fair, Oliver was like, you told me you were going to call for backup, but no, instead you handled this by yourself. It's like, I don't want you handling this yourself. Which Felicity had a good response of being like, you're literally being monitored by the FBI. You're under surveillance. I didn't want you to get in trouble with this whole situation, helping me out and everything. She kind of, I guess, I'm sure she didn't want to bring the team into it herself because it's like, oh, some hacking stuff, I can handle it myself. But then, obviously both streams kind of came together, so. But even at one point, you even have Oliver kind of being, not only what was he the Felicity in the advice sense, but it was also Felicity in the sense of, like, actually taking over Overwatch. He's like, yeah, you pretty much made this system so basic that I can do it. I was like, oh, that's so weird because, Oliver doesn't seem like the tech savvy type, which, to be fair, he's like, well, you kind of made the system so basic that even William could use it. So, which is kind of him basically taking a jab at himself, like, I'm an idiot, but the fact of the matter is I can kind of use this now just because you made it simple to do that. But also because it kind of put things in also perspective for Felicity too, because she's like, how does Oliver do this? It's like, we're dating, I'm helping you with the team, I'm trying to do the startup with Curtis. It's like, how do you find the time? How do you balance everything? He's like, I didn't have to do it on my own. I had you. You were with me on every step of the way. You helped me get to where I am now, which I love the fact is that she's like, yeah, I know you're just saying that as my boyfriend, but those are still, that's still making me feel better. That's still kind of got some kudo points there, but it's like, no, it's still true because she's been there to help him every step of the way, that he never had to make any decision 100% on his own. She kind of helped steer him in the right direction. So it's kind of his time to kind of do the same thing for her. Hence why he wanted to followed her and protected her and Helena, just because it's like, why, I owed you for all the years you've kind of been there to kind of have my back with every situation that's come my way. So Also, turns out I was wrong about that because I was thinking ultimately the like whole business that Curtis was doing on the side. I was thinking like, okay, somehow it's going to be connected to Helix. Turns out not to be the case. Helix is kind of like I said. I'm curious like where the rest of the other hackers in that group are because for now it just seems like it's Caden. So like I said, not unless it's just like now that he's free, he's just off on his own freelancing. So not unless he's like I said, either he's going to be like the main antagonist of this season or there's someone above him. So like I said, it does seem like there is something there when it comes to Laurel. Like it's not like she 100% wants to do what she's doing. I mean it's hard to say whether she really gets a kick out of killing people. Like this is all a means to an end, but it's like, what does she want ultimately? Is there something in this, like, because the question also is like, why has she not bothered going back to Earth 2? Like obviously there's, story purposes of just like keeping like Katie Cassidy around, which is I'm like 100% okay with that. But I'm just curious, like why I guess, ultimately there is nothing on Earth 2 for her. Whether that's of her own like creation or just things working out that way. And like I said, I mean, more so than anything, you can tell like there's a little bit of need for revenge against, Dinah as well as, Lance for what happened to her, them leaving her for dead like that. But it's still also begs the question, how did Caden know to come rescue her? Maybe he'd been keeping an eye on them and everything Team Arrow related, probably ever since her subsequently popping back up, last season, it made him go, oh wait, this is so interesting. Laurel's supposed to be dead, but you're a different Laurel, you're from a different Earth. Maybe that kind of plays into what he's ultimately trying to do to it, because this whole thing seemed like it was a red herring for his ultimate plan, which I don't know if that still plans on like sacrificing like 4% of the population, which is like 300 million people. It's like, I figured it didn't click in my head. You hear 4%, you don't think that's a lot, but it's like 300 million people. That's a lot. But like, what is he up to? We don't know. It's just like introducing super bad guy. So like I said, I'm curious to see where he falls in this like the whole storyline. Like, will he be top tier antagonist? Kind of sad having to deal with him as well as this whole situation with the FBI at the same time. Plus, Oliver gets a call at the end of the episode about Slade needing his help, so that's even more added to his plate, which that's very interesting. It's also interesting too that like Felicity kind of gets an idea from Helena about the whole startup business, and they're going to name it Helix, and it's like, oh yeah, the whole thing could be about replicating the chip that makes it so she can walk, and I'm like, right, that is why you got fired. I couldn't remember why she got fired from Palmer Tech, and it's like, yeah, because she wanted to kind of handle that situation, make it a lot more accessible for other people, but they didn't. And it's like, that doesn't technically fall under proprietary rights, does it? Like, I mean, because she's the only one that has the chip inside of her. Once again, we have not cut back to that, but the fact of the matter is that might be something we, because I brought that up, it's like we have not dealt with Palmer Tech in a while. Plus, going back to it again, like a reference, in 2049 we saw that the building said smoke, so that's still a possibility. So maybe when it's all said and done, Felicity and Curtis will, Helix, their new company, was going to have to cross paths with Palmer Tech because it might turn into a whole proprietary like information, like, oh, we're going to sue you because you're using what I just said, proprietary knowledge and information to recreate something that we own the rights to. So it might turn into that whole issue, which may ultimately leads to Felicity returning to Palmer Tech and now like being the head of it, which would definitely get interesting considering like the whole aspect of already balancing everything right now with the whole being Overwatch. I imagine running a business doing that. I mean, it didn't work out well for Oliver considering like he tried to do that, but now I mean, he still did that, but with mayorship. But being mayor probably allowed him a lot more leniency in certain regards in comparison to like running a business. It's also interesting too because they threw it in there a little bit of storyline about the fact that it matters, this whole anti-vigilante angle. Like 70% of the people support them, like vigilantes, stuff like that, but for them it's still like, yeah, but that's 70%, there's still 30%, which in perspective it's like 30%. And it's like, oh, you're still in the green with the 70%, but it's like that's still a good chunk of people who don't support you. But it's like, we saved the city so many times. Does that mean absolutely nothing? You've literally saved the city every season from some big siege or disaster. So But I guess ultimately that doesn't. Well, because the fact of the matter is, well, vigilantes to a certain degree because like the Hood was kind of like, I mean, everyone thinks he died with Roy, because there was that whole Rory and Roy thing mix up. But nevertheless, so everything the Green Arrow has ever done doesn't really get counted with the Hood, but still that falls on the category of vigilante. So I think that would still sway in that way a little bit, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm ultimately interested to see where that all goes in that regard too. Also, did Caden have anything to do with like the whole digital thing exposing Oliver like in episode 2? Well, technically end of episode 1, but mainly it played a big effect in episode 2 of the season. But it was like it didn't come up in conversation or anything, so I am curious though. And they also kind of set it up to make it seem like Helena might be around a lot more just because of the whole, like, oh, she's like, well, I'll try to figure things out, possibly work for you and Curtis whenever you kind of get your startup started. So I was like, oh, that's cool. We'll be able to see you around a lot more. So maybe get a little more tech support while Felicity's busy. Maybe that kind of plays into the story of like, oh, Felicity's so busy. Oh, don't worry. We got Helena to help. Oh, she slowly starts kicking you out of the way of being Overwatch and stuff like that. Maybe, maybe not. That does ultimately beg the question, though, like, what, because they have pieced it together. It's like everything that's happened up till now this season with Faust and his mercenaries and stuff like that have all been ultimately connected to, or they were connected to Laurel, who is now we see is connected to Kate and James. So everything that's happened so far has been that. But for what purposes? Like I said, once again, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Also, I'm very glad that this episode was a big step forward of being like, well, last week's episode was too, but this week's episode of being like, hey, let's take a big step forward in the whole Oliver and Felicity thing, which I'm like hoping for such a long time. Which also begs the question, whatever happened to Susan? I guess that just because it never, I don't know. Maybe that'll come up again, maybe it won't. But I am curious, I'm happy to see them back together. They're working on everything. Even like her just like, yeah, I was cheering for you. There's kind of depressing things I would talk about, but, just part of me is like, I don't want to talk about it. It's like everyone's got their own opinions about Felicity and stuff like that. I was about to dive into them. I'm like, who cares? I like Felicity. I like what she brings to the table. I like what her and Oliver being a couple. So I'm like, So like I said, that's too, and I feel like it just be me bitching or whatever. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So I'm happy to see them kind of like working on things, and possibly being a couple again. I even like that lady when they were having dinner was like, oh yeah, I'm voting. I'm on your side with this whole vigilante thing. Mayor Quinn is like, awesome. It's like, oh my God, are you two together again? That's so cute. It's like, man, lady, can you stop being nosy? It's like, okay, we're about to go back to dinner now. It's like, oh. It's like Felicity's almost like, how much did you pay that lady to ask that and say that? It's like, I didn't pay her anything to do that. But nevertheless, like I said, I'm interested to see, that relationship continue to grow, but also like what goes down next episode with the continuation of this whole Caden situation, as well as what goes down between Slade and Oliver next episode, which I already kind of got a peek of, but I won't say anything, just for anyone that like, oh, I didn't see previews, so I'm trying not to go see what, don't want that spoil for you, so. I do apologize. I've been like all over the place and I was just like slipping on my words this recording. So I do apologize for that. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.